Hello, my friends of Fudo TV Online. Today we are here with a very special guest and also a member of our family, which is our friend Edgar. But we have the amazing honor to interview for our channel Budo TV Online. One of the my opinion and it's also Edgar opinions. One of the greatest researchers in karate, in traditional karate. Sensei Patrick McCarthy. Sensei, welcome to our channel. It's a great honor for us that you accept this interview in our humble channel here.
Thank you very much. Gracias, mi amigos. Numbrado.
Yeah. Same to you, Sensei. So we're gonna start with the first question. Edgar, do you prefer to do the first question, or you want
Yeah,
me to do?
yeah,
Okay.
okay. Okay, Sensei, what is the meaning of karate for you?
Oh, goodness. So we're starting out with the easy questions. Karate is quite simply a cultural heritage and a vehicle through which to condition the body, cultivate the mind, and nurture the spirit through a systematized set of highly functional fighting practices. That's a definition of what it is for me. I'm not sure that they say that if you can't describe it simply, you don't know it well enough. So that's the simple explanation. The other one might take hours.
The next question would be, when did you start practicing martial arts and why?
Another very easy question for me to answer. Only because I've been asked it so many times in the past. I started practicing the fighting arts at the end of the first week in September 1965. And the reason why I remember this so well is because we had we had just relocated as a child, and in the new school I went to. And by the way, sorry, school begins and I'm a Canadian, by the way, originally from Canada, although I'm in Okinawa now, and many years in Australia and so on. So and everywhere the school year begins differently, you see. But in Canada, the school year begins at the end of the first week of September. We call it Labor Day weekend, and so we all go back to school then. And usually, and I was just in public, come on, I'm 11 years old, so I'm a kid. I'm in what do you call elementary school, but we had what you call an assembly, and in the assembly where all the classes come together, you listen to a little speech by the principal of the school, and you listen to a few things. And we had a little guitar player there, and a singer. Her name was Buffy St. Marie. She would go on to become quite a well-known indigenous. Can I use that word? Indigenous, native Indian girl. Became a singer, quite a well-known pop singer back in the '60s. And we saw a documentary film in the auditorium, which was produced by the National Film Board of Canada, and it highlighted the the competitive career of a Canadian athlete named Doug Rogers, and he was an airline pilot for Air Canada, and he loved judo, and he took up judo and studied it intensely for many years. He went to Japan to study judo it was going to be for 6 weeks. He stayed 6 years. He would ultimately become the Canadian champion, the world champion. And then in the summer of 1964, he went to Tokyo for the Summer Olympics. And of course, the cameras were following him all the way around here. And he made it all the way through the finals and to the elimination to the finals. And he fought for the gold medal in 1964 Summer Olympics at the Budokan in Tokyo. And he only lost that one bout to the Dutchman known as Anton Geesink, who became, of course, a legend in judo as well. So Doug Rogers became a Canadian hero. And it was the first time I'd ever seen any, that was judo, of course. It was the first time I'd ever seen martial arts. And I was just, that's what I want to do. That's what I want to be. And that's when I started. And the following, that weekend, my mom took me to sign up at the St. John Judo Club. That was my entrance into the martial arts. So a long time ago.
Really.
That was many years. So judo was your first martial art.
Yes. Yeah. Judo.
Yeah, same as me. I started with judo. Yeah.
Well, in that era, in the 60s, remember the mid 60s, I mean, karate itself had only been publicly practiced for just a few years. There are some stories around where servicemen, American servicemen coming back from the war, who were stationed here in Okinawa, had learned karate for 1 year or so, maybe 2 years, and they were taking it back to the United States. But you don't hear much. That's maybe 1961, 62, around there. So by the time the first karate tournaments were being promoted, it's already like 1963, so on. So and I came on board in the martial arts just a couple of years later. So it was kind of like first generation. Although I was not an adult, I was only a child. What's interesting now, many years later, I talked to those guys who were first generation, but they were first generation adults, and I was first generation child. So a little bit different, the way we see things and so on.
You want to do the next one? Or next?
Yes, this is okay. Okay. How and why did the idea of writing the Bubishi come up?
Again, great questions. Yeah. Did you send me these questions or no? I can't remember. No.
Yeah.
I should have read them. Okay, my apologies. Look. The Bubishi. So anyway, when I was a kid, I grew up on the east coast of Canada, in a little town called St. John, New Brunswick. And then around 1970, because of my father's job, his work, he's a what they call a pipe fitter and instrument mechanic. He worked on different job sites all over Canada. We got transferred out to Toronto, Canada. So I went from a little community of maybe 50,000 people to a metropolis of millions of people. So it was a big transition, and I was only 15 years old at the time, and so when I got to Toronto, and the Bruce Lee had not caught on just yet, but we had seen Kato, and we'd seen some of the secret agent movies, and we had seen some of the kung fu, and in order to get from my home to the karate dojo where I was training, you imagine millions of people from a little townie of 50,000 people. I had to take a bus to the subway station, and then a subway, like a train, all the way into the downtown area, and then take another train down to the intersections of where I had to go, and then walk for 25 minutes to get to my dojo. But in those days, that was nothing. That was today. I laugh sometimes today when students say, "Oh, I cannot go to the dojo; it's too far away." "Oh, how far is it?" "Oh, it's like 2 kilometers." Oh, we were going 25, 30 kilometers one way to get to the dojo in those days by bus and walking, you know. So anyway, so in those days, I just wanted to say when I got to the final subway stop, I then had to walk, and I walked through what we now know as Chinatown. You have to remember, in those days, I'd never met a Chinese person before. I'd never seen an Asian person. You know, that's kind of funny because today we live in such a multicultural world. But you remember, I was born in the early 1950s. And I grew up in a very, very, you know, local Irish, Scottish, English, you know, community on the east coast of Canada. So, you know, I don't mean to say segregated, but it was, you know, not multicultural at all. And so by the time I would get to Toronto, every day was like being at Disneyland, you know. It was the sights, the sounds, and especially walking through Chinatown was fantastic. Anyway, the point is this, is I used to go into a little bookstore in Chinatown next to a restaurant that my first Chinese restaurant I ever went into. And the books, of course, the books were all in Chinese, but they had martial art books there as well. And in those days, you were allowed to go pick up a book and, you know, and read through, looked at the pictures. And it was very popular. Today, you cannot do that. You have to buy the book, you know. And so I picked up a little book, and it was called, now I can tell you the name. Then I couldn't tell you the name. But it was, in Japanese, the book was called Seipai no Kenkyu. And Seipai no Kenkyu means, in English, the study of the kata seipai is what it means. Goju kata seipai. And the book had been written originally in 1934 by Mabuni Kenba, who was the pioneer, who pioneered, as you know, Shitoryu Karate, and had studied under many instructors, but his two principal instructors were Higono or Higashiona Kanjo and Itoso Anko, you see. Of course, there was Aragaki Seisho and other people, but those were the two. But this particular book, so why would a Japanese book, a karate book, be doing in a Chinese bookstore? So thanks for asking. So what this book was, it was not the original Japanese publication, but it was a pirate copy rendered in Taiwan, which was, and Taiwan in those days was kind of famous for taking books, doing their own version of them, and you know, never giving credit to where the book came from, type of thing, you know. And so I couldn't understand any of the writing. And by the way, it had all had been transliterated into Chinese, by the way. And so it had Mabuni Kenba doing pictures of him in a karate gi, you know, doing seipai kata, which I didn't even know at the time, by the way. But I like the pictures of, you know, and in the back half of this book was the Bubishi. And it was Mabuni's copy of the Bubishi that he himself said I got from my teacher, Itoso Anko. And so, and you know, the Bubishi is not usually associated with Itoso Anko. It's associated with the, you know, Miyagi Chojun, Higashiona Kando, this lineage here. So that was my first introduction into what the Bubishi was, but I didn't know what it was. And I wouldn't know what it is for many years thereafter. And it wasn't until I met a teacher of Goju Ryu named Chinen Tero Chinen from the Jundokan, who would teach and tell me about the value of this particular book. So now I'm jumping ahead, you know, because the first book I ever wrote was what was it again? It was the first book I ever wrote was a classical kata of Okinawan karate, and it was published in the mid 1980s. You see. And so it was in the early 1980s that I got to better know what the Bubishi was, because in my first book, Classical Kata of Okinawan Karate, I was able to get the translation of the contents of what the Bubishi was. So I can say safely that my study of the Bubishi began officially in maybe 1982-3, I think, around there. Yeah. And so, and of course, once I came to know what it was, it then gradually transformed from, a gentle interest into a mad passion, and ultimately a vocation. And to say that the Bubishi has been the single most I'm having a bit of an argument in my mind right now whether it has been the single most influential document I've ever had the opportunity to study, or the second. We can talk about the other one later, okay? But yeah, it's made a very profound impact on the way that I have come to understand this art that brings us together.
It's great. I think that Bubishi is one of my opinion, is the same. It's like in any person who loves traditional karate or karate in general, I think Bubishi is something you must study and read, or at least know about this amazing book. I mean, that's
there's just as a matter of interest. In fact, because it's kind of this issue's going on again right now in another part of my life. The Bubishi, which I suppose in many ways has been more closely associated with Goju-ryu practitioners. Of course, Miyagi Chojin Sensei selected the name for his interpretation of the fighting arts would come from the Bubishi, Goju, and so many people associate this old textbook or document, if you will, with Goju-ryu. But there's one particular sect of Goju-ryu, and understand there are many sects, many. So in Japanese we use the word ha. For example, you practice say Goju-ryu. So I say Goju-ryu, but what kind of Goju? Mabuni. Sorry. Oh, well, yeah, maybe you do Mabuni ha. Goju-ryu, Shitoru, because Shitoru brings together the fusion of Higo no Kanjo's teachings with Ito Sonko. So it's safe to say that those parts might be considered the elements from Higashi no Kanjo that were passed on to Miyagi Chojin would not be any different from that which was passed on to Miyagi Chojin himself from Higashi no Kanjo compared to Mabuni Kenma, for example. But Miyagi, of course, taught many other people. And so, for example, you might, for example, Shinzato Jingan was one of his principal students, but he died during the war. So then, of course, you might look at maybe guys like Higaseiko. Higaseiko lived much later. Miyagi Sensei died in 1953. Higaseiko, whose dojo was known as the Kodokan, didn't die until 1966. But other students who came from him, Yagi Meitoku, for example, established the Meibukan. Miyazato Eiichi Sensei established the Jundokan. Kinaseiko, for example, was also a student of his, as was Aragaki Suichi, but they did not open or start their own dojos, you see. And so, for example, if you went to, say, the Meibukan, and then you contrasted what you learned at the Meibukan with, say, the Jundokan or the Kodokan, or maybe Shoreikan with Toguchi Seikichi or these people, you're going to find differences, you see. But in this one particular lineage that goes like this, Higashi no Kanjo, Miyagi, arguably Kyoto Juhatsu, Miyagi Chojin, then you get to this student named Higaseiko, then Izumigawa Kanki, Ichikawa Sosui. So this particular lineage here, this group have adopted the Bubishi as literally a Bible for their particular Christians. And they are used the Bubishi as the master text, handed down allegedly from Higashira Higona Kanjo to Miyagi Chojun, then from Miyagi Chojun onto Higaseiko, then from Higaseiko onto Izumigawa Kanki, and Izumigawa Kanki onto Ichikawa Sosui, and so on and so forth. And so their entire karate study surrounds its technical, tactical, and philosophical teachings. And so one might say that the Bubishi itself is in fact an entire style all on its own.
Wow.
Mhm.
It's very good. Let's, yeah.
In my opinion, the Bubishi is so good and it's so different because in the modern karate, okay, you can learn to hit or you can to learn everything, but you can to learn to take care or about your healthy, about the different thing when you end the training and when you start the training. Only hits and only movements, but no the complete healthy.
There's a difference between the sport.
Well,
karate.
Yeah, my apologies for interrupting.
No,
I was mentioning that this is just kind of going on in my life right now. Let's take a minute so I can share something with you. It maybe some of your listeners may be aware of this. So, in fact, the very first opportunity I ever had to come to Spain to teach was, as you know, in Madrid.
Yeah,
And-
I started in the federation.
No. Before the Federation.
Oh,
Yeah, no, I came before the Federation. Do you remember by any chance?
yeah. No, I only in the federation. I remember the federation, but no more.
Yeah, his name was Fernando Feito Juarez. And my apologies if my Spanish pronunciation is not so good.
But Philip Madrid.
Fernando Feito Juarez, and he was a lawyer, actually a lawyer, but he was not happy being a lawyer, and he wanted to become an acupuncturist. You know, he wanted to work in TCM, traditional Chinese medicine, and he was fascinated by the Bubishi. And so he was the first person to invite me to Madrid, to Spain, to teach a seminar. And I can remember it was just a wonderful opportunity. I met so many wonderful people who I am now still in contact with. And that first visit opened the door to meet all the other wonderful people that I have since met, to travel to so many places in Spain and meet and train with such wonderful people. So the Bubishi also, interestingly, served to make my connection with Spain. So
great. So
Yeah.
opens the door for friendship and, no people.
well, you know, it's interesting. We there's a kind of a, I want to say, paraphrasing. Let me just talk about paraphrasing for a minute. You know, like for example, if someone teaches you something, then you can pass that piece of something on to another person, and you can say, "I learned this from that person." But if, for example, if you have many sources who influence the way you think, it no longer becomes that person or that person's opinion that you're sharing, but it becomes a fusion of different thoughts that come together in your mind. And I like to use the term, it's like a common thread that weaves together the fabric of the way we think. And so I use these terms. The fighting arts for me have become a way with which to connect with other like-minded people who, like myself, are also in pursuit of common goals. We're all chasing the same things. You know, we want something that will provide us with a pathway for physical fitness, not just for this year or next year, but for our lives. We certainly want something that's challenging as well, because the more challenging it is, the more difficult it becomes. The more difficult it becomes, the greater the lessons it is that we get, because it's not easy to overcome the challenges. And many times the failure itself becomes the lesson, you see. So the conditioning of the body becomes part of what attracts us. I mentioned earlier the cultivation of the mind. Especially at my age, I'm coming up on 70 years old, not so far away, and I think about things like, I have friends of mine who've retired, and they're older than I am, and they're not active. You know what I mean? They're not active physically. They're not active mentally, and I try to get them out and go for a walk, and get them active, because as a young person you don't think anything about physical activity, but as you get older, life changes quite a bit, and so having that something that not only keeps you active, but it keeps your mind busy as well, that's an important thing. So the fighting arts, for me, and I think for everybody, is also something that's very important for the mind, you see. And it's like the Shuhari process, Shuhari, learn from tradition, separate or break the chain of tradition, and then transcend the tradition, only to wind up back at the doorstep of tradition again. And so this is like corresponds with youth, adulthood, maturity, physical, philosophical, spiritual. So often when you're young, you cannot philosophize or talk about spiritual things to a young person. They don't get it, They're too busy chasing the magic, and with that bulletproof kind of mentality. So it's only, maybe when they get older, maybe get married, settle down, have children, and the knock comes at the door and a guy says, "Hi, is your daughter home?" All of a sudden, you then realize the value of philosophy and morality. And, son, I want to talk to you. But imagine trying to teach that to a teenage kid or a young man. So the point I'm trying to make is that the fighting arts can also be provide that body of moral philosophy or introspective philosophy that serves not only just to govern the behavior of your life, but also provide a pathway for a morality, what's good about life, how to give back something after you have become empowered yourself, and about the building blocks of life: self-esteem, confidence, this ability to help others. Okay, and certainly the last part is the nurturing the spirit. We only have a certain amount of time here on Earth, in this physical part of life, and there's the only one thing that's constant is change. From the beginning until the end, womb to the tomb, it's change, it's change, it's change. And so we have this, there's this wonderful conceptual philosophy that also we see in the Bubishi as well, and it's about Shoshin, the beginner's mind, and I remember once a gentleman who was my karate instructor 50 years ago, when I first came to Toronto in 1970. He said, his name was Suroka, Mr. Masami Suroka, and he said, when you're born, obviously you're a beginner. You hadn't been born before, unless you're Buddhist, and so when you learn to crawl, you haven't crawled before. It's your first time, and when you take your first step, it's your first step. You haven't done it before, and you have to crawl before you walk, and walk before you run, and bicycle. All of these things are first in your life. You first go to school, your first fight, your first girlfriend, your first kiss, your first failure, your first job, your first I don't know, you're divorced. I don't know. I'm just saying, all of these things become first in your life as you get. I retire from my job. It's the first time I've done that. I'm getting sick and I'm getting old. It's the first time I've done that. I die. That's according to this world, it's the first time you did it, unless you're Buddhist. It could be the third or fourth. You see, depends where you are in the world. Right? So when I say there's this physical, philosophical, and spiritual, that's what I mean when I say like-minded people coming together in pursuit of common goals. And so the only one thing we can enjoy is the camaraderie that's associated with like-minded people. We don't always have to agree on everything, but it's okay to agree to disagree and still be friends, and that's not an easy thing to do. And I was just mentioning to you that there's right now a little bit of ill will, if I can use that term, being pushed around because of this Bubishi. Mr. McCarthy doesn't know anything about the Bubishi. The Bubishi cannot be read about; it has to be absorbed. I'm thinking, okay, let me see. Got the copy in when I was a kid, 17, 18 years old, or whatever, teenager, and then in my early 20s, I started to heavily study it through through a Goju master. Arguably the two most significant Goju masters I'd ever met and trained with in my life were Taro Chinen and Higo Namorio. I mean, those guys they're like gods, and it was these guys helping me, and I would be very honored that Mr. Chinen would help mentor me. And then, of course, Mr. Higona would be the first person to write the very first foreword for my first edition of the Bubishi as well. And so I'm thinking now, so that's been 80, 90. So that's more than 40 years. More than 40 years. And, and it's interesting because, I wasn't just studying the Bubishi, I was translating it from one language into another, so and then when you teach it, they say you'll learn twice, right? And, we could probably just do a whole interview just on the Bubishi alone, because it's been such a wonderful journey. So maybe for another time, right?
No, you're talking about influence and talk about different senseis that you have the chance to learn and help you out in many aspects of your life. That will be my next question. We like to know, and I'm pretty sure people would like to know about your teachers, the people that you learn from you start in judo to now. So, would you like to talk about?
Yeah. Oh, thank you. I'd love to. So first of all, I want to let me share a quote with you. Okay, let me share a quote from my favorite anthropologist. He passed away now. His name was Joseph Campbell. And you might, some of your viewers or subscribers might remember Joseph Campbell back in the 70s brainstormed with what was his name now? George Lucas at his Skywalker Ranch in United States to come up with the idea of Darth Vader as based on a samurai warrior. So that whole Darth Vader thing came from Joseph Campbell as a cultural anthropologist, sharing brainstorming with George Lucas at the Skywalker Ranch. Anyway, and he's written dozens. I think he's written 60 books. And I've read all of them, but the one that spoke loudest to me was Hero with 1,000 Faces. And in this work, Dr. Campbell makes this quote. He said, so every generation produces people who in addition to continuing to use their tradition as a contribution to the society in which they occupy, they find reasons with which to reinterpret it. You know, a passion becomes a vocation becomes a profession. They dedicate their entire lives to a particular study, and during this study, like the Shuhari thing, they find a way in which to maybe make the study more succinct, or to achieve the outcome in a more systematized fashion. It might take less time, and that's what innovation is about. But and so, despite the lip service that's paid to this is better than that, which is what the detractors always want to do when they jump on top of something. Oh, that's no good. We're better, It becomes more innovative ways of doing the very same thing, achieving the very same outcomes. So, and when we talk, for example, I say karate or kung fu, tai chi, these other fighting arts, be they internal, external, north, south, Korean, Japanese, Chinese, arguably, their source of origin is about self-protection, and perhaps the pursuit of self-perfection at the same time, and so in this regard, this idea about being able to find something that kind of fits you, it's about finding a mentor that first of all that you resonate with. You've gone to we're talking about teachers, right? So you say, oh, so and so taught. What did this person teach you? What did that person teach you? Or, oh, this person influenced me in a certain way. A lot of times, you go to a teacher and you might spend a little bit of time with that teacher and say, wow, I don't like this teacher. And it's not because you don't like the teacher, because the teacher is maybe pushing you, or the teacher's a real hard ass, and 50 more, not that. No, you not liking the teacher because maybe the teacher's behavior or immoral behavior, or their ability to maybe intimidate learners rather than empower learners, or this teacher can only find a pathway by bullying a person. So there's lots of different types of teachers. And when I say resonate, what I mean is you get a teacher, and as soon as the teacher, man, woman, whoever happens to be, when the teacher begins to mentor you, everything falls away, and all you hear is the words bring to life concepts and images, and the ability to grasp something. And so that if the teacher shows you how to lift up one corner of the paper and then goes away, you feel so excited. You want to learn how to lift up the other corner of the paper yourself, so when you come back, you can be proudly say, oh, look what I've done. Look what you've helped me accomplish. Okay, I needed to say that because I want to come back. I've had lots of teachers, lots. And I'm not even sure that I could accurately tell you who they all are right now. I learned things from everybody. I learned something. I was on the beach training this morning. I spoke to an old guy, 85-year-old guy, and in Japanese, and I learned something from him. So I think that we are our own best teachers. That's what I think. Okay, but who, you're asking, who amidst the many teachers I've been with have helped me see the goal, or helped mentor me, guide me through this labyrinth of tributaries about learning? That's easy for me to do. Certainly my very first karate teacher, whose name was Adrian Gomez, I think maybe in Espanol is Gomez. Mm-hmm. And his family were originally from Aruba, Venezuela, so that would be Spanish people. Hey, see, Spanish again, right? So he of course was very influential in the 1960s for teaching me, and because without him I would never have stayed on this path, you see. And so I owe this gentleman an enormous amount of gratitude for helping to cultivate that in me. The next teacher was very important for me was a Canadian boy by the name of Wally Slokey. You probably don't know his name these days. He was a kind of an early pioneer for fighting, kumite, and other things, business especially. But for me, it was the fighting aspect. He helped bring the best out of me, and I became a champion fighter, I believe, a lot because of his mentorship. He was from Toronto. He's still in Toronto. He's still around, by the way. And Wally Slokey was his name. And it was through Wally Slokey that I met, in October of 1977, I met Richard Kim. Now that's a name that other folks will be more familiar with. And Richard Kim had been born in 1917. He'd been around for a very long time. He was his mother was Japanese and father was Korean, born in Hawaii, and had a chance to start his training very early in life. And so through Mr. Kim, and Mr. Kim was sometimes described as the Harvard professor of karate, because we have a term in karate, in Budo, called Bunburyodo, and Bunburyodo means there. This one?
Yeah.
This is Bunburyodo. And yeah, I have them all over my office. And the next one is Onko Chishin. Next one is Ryusui Saiken Shizuwaza. So I just give it just for those three. Let me come over here. Just for those three, one means mastery cannot be obtained. Oh, sorry, my cables are my computer cables. Sorry about that. I have my computer sitting up on a thing so I can fit into it. Otherwise, I'd be looking down or looking up. Bunryo-do is something like the balance. Do is the michi, the pathway, and in order to balance one's training or balance one's study or balance one's life on the pathway, your physical training has to be balanced by the non-physical study. It could be a scholarly study, philosophy, historical, anthropological, pedagogical, something to balance the physical part. Because when the physical is not balanced by the intellectual, you see and you recognize an imbalance, usually in a person's character or behaviors, where you see that, and that's why this balance is so important. And sometimes people will say Bunburyodo. Just a minute, I'm going to see if on my desk here I've got this. Sorry, my swords. My swords are. Hang on. I'll just quickly pull one out because it makes for an interesting. It makes for an interesting topic on the Bunburyodo thing, So this is oops. This is my. This is a Koto Tanto, by the way, from the Muromachi period. Hang on. This is a sword, and this is a calligraphy pen. You see? So they say the pen is mightier than the sword. And often this Bunburyo thing that we're talking about is sometimes symbolized by the pen and the sword. The pen and the sword in constant accord. The scholarly and the physical has to be together, cannot be separately. Otherwise, I was going to pull out this obsidian knife. So every historian has one of these, of course. And the onko chishin things, it means to study the past is to better understand the present, and particularly with regards to the direction that you're heading in the future. Anyway, I don't mean to jump off the topic because we're talking about teachers who have inspired me. And I couldn't get beyond that without telling you about Richard Kim, and that it was he who put me on this pathway about studying that which is not physical. And it was made a profound impact on, and I think I'm pretty confident that because of Mr. Kim, O-Sensei Richard Kim, that I was more inclined to grab the Bubishi when I did, to realize how valuable that was, you know. But then again, I needed a person to show me that. And so Chinen Teru, or Teru o Chinen, here in Japan. So my name is Patrick McCarthy, and but in Japan, that's not my name. My name is reverse. My name is McCarthy Patrick, or you know, the Japanese cannot pronounce the THs and so on. So it becomes Makashi Patoriku, because my name is spelt in katakana, and katakana, like kanji, are pronounced in single syllables, contracted together. So, for example, if I say "Ohayo gozaimasu," you know, good morning, minana, ¿cómo está? It's "Ohai o go zai I." It's all just single syllables. See? So, Makashi Patrick desu kedomo. And so this onkochi thing became very important with the Bunryodo, you see. And then, of course, the middle one here, it reads Ryusui Saki Kisuwazu, which means that, you know, in your learning process, and if I can compare the pathway of learning to just a pathway, it depends then how far down the pathway you get before it becomes evident that the destination is not the goal. It's the journey. But on the journey, you're always going to come up against, you know, barriers. How do you get over the barrier, or through the barrier, or under, or around it, you see? And so this koto waza, this proverb on the wall, reads, flowing water does not compete with anything in front of it. It goes over, around. It might freeze, it might evaporate, it might stay, but it will always continue to never resist what's in its way. And so that becomes an important learning, especially for when you know, I mean, how long have I been doing this for? I don't even know, like my whole life, you know, really, since I've been a child. And I've never imagined doing anything else. I've never had a job, for example, if you want to say job, like go to the office or something. This is my office. It's what I've done my entire life. So, and I can't imagine doing anything else. And it's I'm totally preoccupied. I'm probably more preoccupied with it now than I was even in childhood. But it's funny how the wave changes. You know, you're young and you're full of energy, and I'm training all the time. And I used to live just for tournaments. I mean, and you know, living in a city, a metropolis. I mean, Toronto, Ontario now is 8 million people. I mean, some countries don't have that many, you know, and so every weekend, Saturday and Sunday, there was always tournaments everywhere. So for years, I went to tournaments every weekend. It was a way of life for me. I was involved with the national ratings competition, and I was also doing Chinese Kung Fu as well. I started doing Kung Fu as well. So Kung Fu, karate, and I would compete in kata, weapons, fighting, in Chinese style, and you know, then seminars and opportunities, and so all of these things become very very important for me as learning opportunities. So okay, so Adrian Gomes, Wally Slokey, Richard Kim, Taro Chinen. And then about the mid 1980s, I was very frustrated and a little bit angry about the direction in which I was headed, because it was so sport was everything. I mean, you look, for those of you who are old enough to remember, you know my ugly face on the cover of more than 35 karate magazines around the world, and lots of stories and articles about my competition background, and fighting and kata and stuff like that. Became highly political, and to the point where I was not enjoying the life in Budo, and by this time I'd also taken up Japanese swordsmanship and Western swordsmanship. By the way, side story, on one of my trips to Spain, because I like Western swordsmanship, I went to Toledo, and in Toledo there's a famous, well, actually quite a few famous, but one of the most famous Spanish sword makers is in Toledo. So of course I had to go and visit him and spend a ridiculous amount of money on swords. So, that's a passion. But so this idea of learning from other people, learning from other experiences, was very moving for me. But it came to a point in the mid 1980s where I said, there's got to be more to it than this. There has to be more than just fighting and kata and winning trophies, and then and people treat you a lot differently, when you're a champion. And I have no problem to tell you that when I was young, the joke in my family was, you should have asked me the question when I was young, because I knew all the answers to everything in the world then. There's nothing I didn't know. Bulletproof mentality, and as the older I got to realize, the more I realized I didn't know anything, and so I needed to be taken down a few steps, get the ego, back in check, so to speak. And so I decided to go to, I come here to Japan. So 1985, I came here to Okinawa with two of my friends. We spent the whole summer here, and it was a life-changing experience for me. And so, and also, and of course, then within 2 years of this, I would meet the love of my life, and just as today, we are celebrating this long time marriage. So, yeah, 35 years. So anyway, so that changed the way that coming here, having the opportunity to walk in the footsteps of the masters, the pioneers, I came to see a different side of fighting traditions, and such a beautiful culture here, and language, and people, and lifestyle, and so within just a couple of years of that, I found my wife Yuriko, and then the following year we married. But we lived on the mainland, up on the mainland. I lived there for 10 years. And then in 1995, I had a job off. Oh, so yeah, again, Spain. Look. So as you know, the president of you guys know this, the president of the World Karate Federation is Antonio Espinosa. And Antonio Espinosa, who's my friend, by the way, the treasurer for the World Karate Federation in those days was a guy in Australia named John Halpin. And John Halpin approached me after one of his students was listening to my lecture about what we're talking about now, about the anthropology of this tradition. And they gave me a job offer. They said, look, we'd like you to go to Australia and help write the first martial arts instructors diploma program. And that's why I left Japan and went to Australia. And it was going to be a 2-year contract, and I was going to write the program for the Minister of Education, and then give it, and then it was going to be taught in the college there. But anyway, long story short is the college petitioned me. Would you please stay on and become the lecturer in the Faculty of Education to help deliver the course? And we loved Australia. Australia's a beautiful place, and so I stayed until 2 years ago. 24 years I stayed there. My children were, brought up. My children were born in Japan, of course. And by the way, my children are back in Japan now. They live on the mainland. My daughter's a doctor in Yokohama. My son is a lawyer in Tokyo. So we're all back where we first came from, so to speak. But Australia was a great culture for them to grow up and become educated, and so anyway, teachers, influence. How did I get all this stuff? The reason why I brought up the Australian part with the is because some of the best lessons I've ever learned have been from the most unexpected places. And when I got offered the job to go to Australia and write a martial arts program for instructors, I thought to myself, piece of cake, no problem. I'm going to go, me, Mr. Smarty Pants, I know everything, I'm going to go there, I'm going to sit down at the desk, it'll take a couple of weeks, write up a program. I'll tell you, when I got there, I had no idea what to do. Once I sat my ass down at the desk with all the other course writers, the faculty head came to me one day and she said, Patrick, are you having a problem with the program? I'm, no, I'm good. Which was a lie. It wasn't true at all, And then she came back 2 weeks later and said, I need to see your work. And I went, I haven't got it done yet. Okay. So she said, okay, I'm going to introduce you to, and they had what they call every faculty, health sciences, medicine, engineering, all faculties in a tertiary level environment have this. They have what they call course writers. And course writers are usually people who are, they have a background in education or pedagogical skills. And what they do is they help the writers focus in on the outcomes and to shape the way lesson planning is approached and assessment criteria is addressed and so on. Right? And she said to me, her name was Clem West, Jewish lady in her 80s, retired PhD professor, but loved doing what she was doing. And she combined, she said, well, what are you doing? I said, I have no idea. Because I thought, it's karate. I'm going to go down there. I'm going to make a karate. And they said, no. The people who are going to come and register on the course, they're going to be from every walk. They're going to be from Taekwondo, Kung Fu, Karate, Penjak Slap, Pujimi Kuntao, Pukalan, freestyle, American karate. They're going to be from everywhere. And they're going to spend 2 years studying at this college, taking this program. So when they leave, they're going to be fully licensed. They're going to know how to, teach, how to write lesson plannings. They need to learn about the business practices, injury risk management, instructional skills, all a body of information that has nothing to do with karate, but has to do with imparting information. And that began, it took me 2 years to write the program. And those 2 years were probably the most profound learning experience for me from someone who'd never taken a karate lesson in her life before. Which, but they say, the expression that goes, when the student is ready, the teacher appears. And I didn't need to know how to punch and kick. I learned that. I didn't need to know how to fight. I knew how that as well. But this idea of being able to quantify instructional skills, because everybody doesn't learn the same thing the same way to achieve the same outcome. And the way that adults learn are different from the way children learn. Men and women don't get it the same way. That's not a discrimination or discriminatory comment. It's a fact. Challenged learners, be it physically or intellectually or emotionally or spiritually challenged, they don't learn the same way, say, an alpha athlete learns, you see. And so all of these individual characteristics had to be considered from a pedagogical point of view as to how the person responsible for shaping the knowledge and experience of a learner had to be. And that was such a, I mean, the punches and kicks I learned there not to think in terms of punches and kicks, but I learned the mathematics and the science behind kinetic energy transfer. Because if it had to do with percussive impact, then it had to be some part of the body, your headbutt or an elbow or a fist or a foot. What part of the human anatomy was being used to impact another part of another human anatomy? And because of that and that alone, then the biomechanics behind generating acceleration became at the forefront of learning. And if you weighed this much and you were going to impact a workload of that much at this distance, how do you generate the acceleration to create the PSI or the force to be adequate enough to accomplish the outcome? So you understand, so it didn't matter if you're Taekwondo, Kung Fu, Karate. If you're going to strike somebody, then you have to better, if you were teaching someone, if your responsibility as an educator, instructor, coach, senpai, shifu, sabum, shihan, whatever cultural terminology you wanted to use, if you were mentoring another person about percussive impact, then you had to know the science, you see. And if you're going to use the science, and you needed to know the anatomical descriptions of the parts of the body doing it, you had to learn more about the body as well. And so there's two separate studies in itself. And then if someone's going to get hit in the face, or you're going to get hit in the face, or you break a knuckle, or you slip and fall, or you were thrown and you break a bone, or you pull a muscle, by virtue of that happening, or the potential of that happening, then it becomes incumbent upon you to have the responsibility and the obligation to understand what's the injury risk management, and how do I bandage that injury, or how do I put a splint on a broken wrist, arm, foot, leg, whatever, dislocated knee, and until the ambulance comes. So how do I transport that person if we're out on a gashiku, out in the forest or something, and a guy he fell and broke his leg? How then can I make a splint and get that person back a couple of kilometers or back to safety? So all of these things had to come together, and that was for anatomy and physiology, sports medicine, all of these things, which I had no idea about in the first place. So I not only had to learn them, and then I had to write them into a course. And then, of course, this, because the nature of what brings us together, although it has to do with the human condition, from the time of, let me think about it, hang on. How old is your fighting art? Oh, I don't know. Let me see. Hang on for a minute. So in the beginning, there was nothing. And then, the animals came, and then the reptiles and the birds, and then a person. And then a second person, and then lots of people, lots and lots and lots of people. And when lots of people came, it started to get chaotic. And chaos produces, especially the unbridled part, violence. And violence produces what we call necessity. The necessity is the survival of our species, the survival of the fittest. So those of us in early history who were able to quantify this and say, we want to survive, we had to come together into groups, into communities to strengthen our safety, you see. And then over the generations, the eons, we had to use empirical observation, the ability to study something in order to help overcome it. And this case was self-protection, you see. How to understand something, how to quantify it, how to replicate it for the purpose of studying it in order to create mechanisms with which to overcome it, you see. And that started this process, this pathway of learning about acts of physical violence that are habitual in human nature. And forget the weapons and forget the melee with the battlefield. That's a different thing altogether. Just individual acts of physical violence in domestic society. And so then we can follow this lineage through every culture in the world. Every culture has had ways with which to protect themselves. You know, I did a cross-comparative analysis of works. And by the way, some of the Spanish books on combat from the medieval times. And don't forget, and I also, I did a very deep study of Nicholas Bader and Hans Telhofer's medieval, not just on swordsmanship and weapons, but also the grappling part as well, because my interest was largely involved with that. So I talked about percussive impact, and I talked about velocity and speed and Isaac Newton and so on like this. But if you weren't being struck, you were being seized, you see. So and whether you seize with your hands or your arms or my legs or the teeth, the seizing has to do with different science. That's why we needed them to shift our attention over to these 5 ancient machines, you see. The same ancient machines that built the pyramids, for example, and the fixed axle and the wheel, the 3 categories of levers, the screw, the wedge and the pulley. These machines, because the way the body flexes or extends, pronates or supinates, deviates, inversion, aversion, dorsiflexion. These actions of the human body is how you put a joint lock, a pressure point, a takedown, a strangulation, a throw, a grappling, groundwork. So if you're doing limb entanglement or joint manipulation, blood or air deprivation, balance displacement, fighting on the ground, escapes, encounters, or any of the percussive, or even digging into the cavities of the body unprotected by the skeletal structure, you need to understand the mechanisms with which works, and because they're not any different in Taekwondo or Karate Kung Fu, and because that's an interpretation of this, or an understanding or a lack of understanding of these common principles, because they have rules and regulations, you see. But from a self-protection point of view, there is no rules, you see. And because there's no rules, then it becomes incumbent upon the individual who's responsible for imparting the information to understand these things. And I'm the guy who's responsible for writing the course. And I'm going to say the best thing and the worst thing that ever happened to me was realizing I didn't know it. And because I didn't know it, and they had hired me. I don't know how I passed the interview. I probably knew more than they did, and they didn't know much, so I was a little bit higher than them, And so that was an enormous learning curve for me. And what happened while I was doing this were the walls, the box inside which styles exist, fell apart. The walls fell down. And I really came to know that over on the other side here, I got another kotowaza that says this. It's a Chinese proverb, and it says about the mountain. And there's many pathways to get up on the top of the mountain. But when you get to the top of the mountain, there's only one moon to be seen. And I really, really got that then, and oh my God, nobody cares out on the battlefield or in self-defense, what style you are. You only care that you are functional. Mm-hmm. If you are functionally competent, that's all that matters. Not what color your belt is, where your crest is, what organization you're a member of, only if you're functional. And so, sorry, I took such a long time to explain this, but it's worth the listening to, you know, because of some, if I just say, I know what I'm talking about. He goes, no, he doesn't. He doesn't know. You know. So your question was, you know, my teachers, who mentored me, who did I learn from, blah, blah, blah. So I wanted to tell you that in a this linear fashion, which is not really linear at all, you know, but it was Adrian Gomes. It was Wally Slokey. It was Richard Kim. It was Taro Chin. It was Mori Higona. It was all of these type of people. And when I came to Japan, one of Richard Kim's teachers, Kinjo Hiroshi, would become my direct teacher. I'll talk about him in a minute, but it wasn't until I sat my ass in the faculty of, well, actually, I wrote it in the faculty of health sciences, but it was for the faculty of education. Sorry, that's the other way around. I wrote it in the faculty of education for the faculty of health sciences. And those 2 years was a remarkable learning experience. And then being asked to stay on to deliver the course. And by the way, the course was 22 subjects. I said, it wasn't really 22 subjects. There were more like 12 subjects, but there's in each course there were four semesters. 2 years has 4 semesters. 1 year, 2 semesters. So 2 years are 4 semesters. So one subject, you got 4 semesters. You see? So do the mathematics, you see. So I was responsible for teaching martial arts foundation and martial art technique, which brought into play the physical, the technical, and the tactical, the anthropological and the pedagogical altogether into these courses. Other people were teaching, you know, anatomy and physiology. Other professors in my college, and my students would get up out of our classroom, go to another classroom, you know, for a lecture in anatomy and physiology or sports injury management or this type of thing, you see. And as I started teaching the course, you know, they say if you teach, you'll learn twice. So I was teaching, and I taught that course for 7 years, by the way. I had a lot of students. Most of the students all came from overseas, Spain, for example, as well. And so when you teach something, you know, from this pedagogical point, we say visual, auditory, kinesthetic. But from a teacher's perspective, there's more to it than that. You're also then challenged to record your teaching or your learning, because progress, any and all progress, is only ever made possible through the taking of careful measurements. Thank you, Steve Bellamy. And as a result of that, when you record what you're learning, it's then easy to go back and look at where you were once and measure how far you have come forward. So, for example, when I talk to groups who want to come with us, for example, International Ryukyu Karate Research Society, sales pitch, okay. You know, when people are looking at our organization because they want to maybe create a more synchronized teaching curriculum and how to evaluate their learners at Q or Dan ranks and teaching titles, how do we grade them? How do we evaluate them? What is the assessment criteria and so on? Then these types of things become quite important, you see. So delivering the lesson and recording it became a very important issue as well. And then finally, of course, is the teaching of the lesson. Because when you teach the same lesson twice, you get a deeper understanding of it. And can you imagine when you teach the same lesson over and over and over again, and not just to the same person, but to different people? And I don't mean say just different, say children or girls or adults or old people, but to black belts or, you know, to senior ranking black belts, you know. And you know, so while I was teaching at the college, word spread out around the world. Oh, there's a martial arts, you know, there's a fully academic diploma program available in Australia. So a lot of people, we got a lot of attention all over the world, you know, and people were talking about it all over the world and coming to study with us. And I was then being gradually invited out to many different countries to teach. You know, now we've taught hundreds and hundreds, maybe 1,000 seminars in 30 years or more in 50 or 60 countries around the world. And I've had a wonderful pleasure to work with a lot of senior, more senior than myself, instructors all around the world. And when you get the attention of guys like Antonio Espinosa and or Antonio Serrano Manuel, who just by the way, congratulations to Damien and Sandra. Man, what a remarkable job. Bring home the gold. But when you look at leaders of that quality, looking at what I'm doing, it's a very gratifying story. I remember I said to Mr. Espinosa, I said, may I ask you a question? I said, why is it you're interested in me? And by the way, I have to really say muchas gracias, señor, because a few years ago when I was I wanted to immigrate to the United States. Bad idea, but that's another story. I was very, very grateful that Antonio Sensei Espinosa wrote a beautiful letter of recommendation for me. I'm sorry I don't have it. If you like it, I will send it to you. You can use it maybe in the interview here. And he was, Patrick McCarthy is, a person whose contributions to the fighting arts stand alone, especially from the academic point of view. And that's one thing that's lacking in the sports side of the art, you see. And think about it. People come into the sport, they come into the tradition, and they're in a club, maybe in a club that's highly competitive. And they show the type of skill that might be interpreted as, this guy could be a great fighter or kata or something, team member. And so the coach, they make a team, and but after the competitive years are finished, and maybe they go into judging or refereeing or coaching, a very honorable position, but they might go with the federation or something like that. But show me 10 people like that. I'm going to show you 9 people who will say to you, but what else is there? I want to learn something about the art. It's history, it's philosophy, it's spiritual essence, it's anthropology, the pedagogical, holistic. Where is this part as well? And that's me. And that's why Antonio said to me, he said, Patrick, he said, I make no promises, but he said, when it comes to finding someone who can help us in this area, I'm going to count on you. And I said, sir, you have my loyalty and my support, because I'm more interested in helping empower other instructors to better understand this part of what is not commonly embraced in the art. And so anyway, long story, I'm sorry, I jumped off on a horse and went in so many different directions. But so that introduction to that program was an enormous learning curve for me. So you learn from looking, you learn from listening, you learn from doing, you learn from writing, and then you learn from teaching. And this 5-part pedagogical pyramid is an extremely important part in this Shuhari learning process. So I just want to finish a story about the beginner's mind, and then I'll turn it back over to you. And so Mr. Soroka said to me, when you're born, you're a beginner, and all of these things across life until you die, you're a beginner. And the reason why you're a beginner is because you've never done it before. You're dying. You never died before, so embrace it. Get. Often in life, we get so caught up in the struggle, of surviving, the job, the girlfriend, the boyfriend, the husband, the wife, the money, the children, that we miss. We miss the rapture associated with just living one day at a time. There's a great, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's, wonderful story on the detective. He said, "Hey, Sherlock Holmes." He said one of the wonderful quotes they made was, "Don't regret the past, fear the future, or miss the moment, because what lies behind you compared to what lies before you is nothing compared to that which lies within you." And so I always thought, whenever there's a need to better understand who you are, where you came from, where you're going, how you're going to get there, how you're going to overcome the stumbling blocks, the barriers, the failures that you will experience in life, there's always going to be a need for a tradition, a mechanism, a pathway, if you will, of how to live your life from the womb to the tomb, how to come across that life and look back at it in the end and say, that was a life well lived. So I'm sure we all agree on the same thing. The fighting arts, I don't care what the name of it is. I don't get too involved with names and, politics and stuff like that. I'm just saying, whatever the fighting art is, the fighting arts, it's a remarkable pathway because it challenges you all the time. That's the greatest thing. Remember, the acts of physical violence by which our styles would be a means, they don't discriminate. They never change. You have a throat. I can strangle it with one hand or two. From the front, from the back, from the side. I can put sleepers. You either know how to defend yourself against it or you do not. It's as simple as that. Oh, we don't do that in my style. Okay, so if that's the case, don't say your style's about self-defense. So maybe it's a lifestyle or a sport or something. But and so when I talk about these things in what we refer to as the immutable or unchallengeable way. You can't challenge that. It's a possibility you could be strangled or thrown or So because of that, you need to learn all the other stuff. If you're going to use the word competent or master or professor, that for example, let's say I finish high school and I say, I think I'd like to be an engineer. Yeah, I want to be a civil or whatever engineer. I can go down to the university on the open house day, right before the year starts, and I say, hey, oh, there's an open house. Yes, I'd like to talk to the guy who's talking about engineering. Oh, he's over there. Okay. Hello. Tell me about engineering. Yes, well, if you enter our engineering program, it's 4 years or 3 years or 5 years, and and there's it's a 5-course load every semester, 25 subjects, 4 years, and I say, okay, give me an example. What might I be learning in year number 2, civil engineering, structures of bridges? Just a moment. He takes out the computer, double click, open this folder, Hang on. Here we go. Year 2, semester 1, lesson 9. You're going to be learning from these 3 books, those particular conceptual mechanics. Your assessment criteria is this and this and this and this. You're going to be evaluated on that, and you have to have this type of score, and that's how it's going to be. And then at the end, you're going to get a degree in engineering. And if you want to be a master of engineering, it's 2 more years at this university, and you're going to And so in 6 years, I can become a master of engineering. That's right. And then with 20 more years of experience, you can be a super duper master. But so the point is, in academia, they can quantify this. Well, see, how is the fighting arts any different? I'll tell you how. So we're going to take the science of the fighting arts, and then we're going to take art. And this is the responsibility, obligation of the person who mentors you, it's the fusion of art and science being brought together to create a formative pathway which reveals to you that which there is to know. And that's what I don't see. And so often I get a guy, I'm a fourth dan Renchi. And I go, oh, that's fantastic. Can I ask you, how did you get the Renchi license? Well, they gave it to me. Yeah, no, of course they did. But what I mean to say was, in addition to the physical part, the punching and the kicking and that, which I assume you tested different things between first and second and third, and you followed the time and grade, and you got the recommendation and that. But the title, the teaching title, that's different. Teaching's not the same as doing. So why would you be tested on punches and kicks in the teaching part when it's not about that? It's about how and how to deliver that. So when you say, oh, he just gave it to me when I got my fourth down, see, to a guy like me, it doesn't make sense. So I try to say, and the other thing is, my other friends from Jeet Kune Do and MMA and BJJ and catch wrestling, so they go, oh, what a joke. And I go, what do you mean? Oh, we don't do that kata stuff, And I go, what do you mean kata? You mean like, punses or hyungs or chuans, kung fu, taekwondo, whatever, silat, whatever it happens to be. Those are very, those katas are a joke. A joke? Oh, I see. You think because I go like this and that's a joke. Yeah, like that's no good. That's not how you fight. And I go, So I say, okay, so I watched you do this. Look, boom, 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 bang. I watched you do that the other day. Very nice combination, by the way. Thanks. How did you learn that, by the way? Did you did it happen through osmosis, or how did you get that piece of information? My coach showed me. Oh, your coach showed you how to do that. Yeah, that's right. Okay, sorry. Listen, let me just. I'm a little simple. Let me quantify that in my slow-moving mind. Your coach showed you how to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and hammer. That's what he showed you, right? Yeah. Okay, good. So I just wanted to quantify that, because what I want to do is I want to say that left hand, right hand, left hook. I'm going to call that out. Let's call it a template. Okay, let's say okay, boys, line up. We're going to go a couple uppercuts, a couple of hooks, a bob and weave. Let's call that a template. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Template number 1: left, right, left. Template number 2: uppercuts. Template number 3: scoot, elbow, elbow, elbow. Template number 4: tie neck clamp, double knee, headbutt. Okay, well, that's enough. That's enough. Okay, so you have 4 templates being fused together to create a little example, a model, right? Yeah. What's your point? Well, my point is, my friend, that when I do a low block and a front punch, or a mawashi uke, or here in a chop, I'm doing a template. But unlike the left-right hammer, which I use in mutual confrontation, the block, the chop, and the pull is specific. It's actually against a guy who might grab me. And when he grabs me, I hit my arm down on the brachioradialis. And when his face comes forward like this, I fucking chop him in the side of the neck in the carotid artery. And then when I chop him in the fucking neck, I'm going to rip my arm around him and put him in a guillotine, and then come up into a choke like this and put oh. And even then, if they have a heart troubles, I'll go, okay, I see. You can only see things a certain way. Okay, so let me take the glasses off and help you here. Oh, UFC 187, Machida versus Johnny Bones Jones. Okay, it's the opening part of the fight. Jones had these massively long arms, and very tall, and he works him up under the cage, and he puts his hand here, and Machida bumps out to the side, boom, he comes in with the elbow, and he puts the guillotine on him, and they put the underarm guillotine like this, and then here I have to stand up a bit. He comes around and reaches him like this from here, and he's holding him like this, and then, but Machida still got a good strong stance. So in order for Jones to disable his balance, he takes his right leg and he hooks it around the left leg and locks it in tight. So now Machida cannot. His stability is broken, right? And he got this, and he takes his fists around his throat and takes something, and he starts pushing his hand up like this. He doesn't even get to about 8 o'clock. And Big John McCarthy separates him, and Machida falls down because he's already unconscious. Okay, so that's nice and great, fantastic. No such thing as cowards in foxholes. They go, 2 guys went into the cage, 1 guy's a champion. Okay, good. But my point I wanted to make with this guy who can't see that was that is the classical opening move of Basai Dai, for example. Hook the leg in, guillotine him, choking it, push it up like this, and there's no way out of it, And so I had a kind of a difficulty in trying to help others see that we're all doing the same thing. We're all brothers and cousins of the same thing, albeit differently. So, for example, in MMA or BJJ, you have rules and regulations. And the rules and regulations help dictate how you train in order to achieve those outcomes. But make no mistake about it, there's learning, then there's practicing, and then there's training. Those are 3 different things. When you learn, you have to absorb information. So from a pedagogical point, I need to get the theory. Now, I'm not saying you have to be an academic to learn to fight. That's not true at all. In fact, history written in blood tells us that that's not true at all. What I'm trying to say, I'm only talking about from an instructional point of view, and trying to see clearly from how this art can be mastered and how you can quantify what mastery is. Oh, you can never master that. I have to spend my whole life. It's like being a master of engineering. You have to spend your whole life to be a master. Somebody might argue that it will be a study that you can enjoy your entire life, and that the day you take your last step, you're still learning things. But I'm saying that understanding the 5 ancient machines, how the human body works, how you put a joint lock on a takedown, you displace balance, it's all quantifiable. Now, the argument to this from the detractors, the haters, the ones who are incapable of seeing it, is from this perspective. They can't see that, you see. They're still focusing on, my teacher told me this. Oh, in Goju-Ryu, it's not that way. But Shotokan, Penchak Shalat does it this way. And how do you know the guy's going to do that? Fights are random. Of course they are. Of course they are. Random and unscripted. So, I guess there's got to be then, because if you're going to learn, if fighting and defending yourself is against random and unscripted acts of physical violence, I guess then there should, and you should train the way you fight at least one point. A lot of I always love the guys who say, if he did this, I would do that, then I would do this, and this, and then I would do that, and he's unconscious. I'm thinking, oh my God, it's like those pressure point guys, I'm thinking the color green, I'm putting the tip of my tongue on the roof of my mouth, I'm on my toe, and then I touch gallbladder 400 and dies. I think, and they pay $200 for this stuff, Christ almighty, And I always remember Mike Tyson's quote, everybody's got a plan until they get hit in the mouth with a left hook, And so the idea of aggressive resistance in your training, it just goes without saying. It has to be part of your practice because it's what helps not just test the veracity of the functional competency that you're chasing, it challenges you every time you do it. Every single time you do a drill with somebody who's bigger and stronger than you, you are going to be tested. And you might be able to get it to work. There was a television program, and there was an American sitcom, situation comedy that was in America, that was in Australia the years. We used to like watching it. And it was really, really funny. And this guy named Kramer comes home, and he's a big guy, a bit of a nerd, and he goes, I'm taking karate now, and I'm gonna beat those guys, and I go, oh yeah, he's got his karate gi. He doesn't even know how to tie his belt, but he's got the gi, and then throughout the episode you hear him saying, I'm training really hard, I'm gonna get that guy. And then finally everybody in the apartment building where Kramer lives goes down to the dojo. And Kramer, he's in a class with children. The children are beating him up. And anyway, the point being this is, it doesn't matter that you can get it to work against a little kid. It doesn't matter that you can get it to work with no disrespect intended to girls, but I mean, it doesn't matter that you big strong guy can get it to work against a little weak person. That's not the problem. It's the other way around. The dynamics the other way is, how does your average person get an application practice to work against some big, huge, strong guy who might be under the influence of drugs or alcohol, or just he's just a nasty person who's lost it and they really want to hurt you, and there's no referee to say stop and stuff like that. So the process of learning, practice, and training has to be functional. So allow me then to just end this. You asked me about teaching. I'm telling you, this process of what inspired me. The other thing about the Onko Chishin is, when you study the past, you learn a lot about how this stuff came to be the way it was and why it disappeared. Why, if this, the secrets of the fighting arts were so big, Shaolin Temple, what happened to them? Why did they fall quietly dormant? What happened from a cultural point of view, historically, that these things disappeared, and now there's some new things happening instead? So that's for a sec. Please invite me back, and we'll just, if you want to, we only just talk about that. I'll be more than happy to tell you the time frames from, say, the mid 19th century right through until the dawn of the 20th century, the historical phenomena that occurred in China and Southeast Asia, why that went. That's another story. Okay. So here's the process. Oh, yeah. So here's the process, right? Yeah. Okay. Here's the process. So it doesn't matter what your style is, as long as we're talking self-protection. Okay. So I'm telling especially the detractors who say he doesn't know what's happening because it could be unscripted and random. Exactly. So here is the mechanism that and I'm sure all the other people out there who are teaching functional application practice, I'm sure you already know, and I'm sure you know. So I'm singing to the choir, but let me just say this for maybe the one or two people who don't know, and they would like to know. And it doesn't matter where you're from, Penjak, Silat, Kung Tao, Pajimi Kun, Judo, Wrestling, Kendo, Karate, Goju-Ryu, Shotokan, it doesn't matter, okay? It's like this. So somebody says, yes, I do this, and then I do this, and then I do this, and that's how I do it. And they go, well, okay, great. And then all of a sudden, one day, you're out shopping, or I don't know, you're anywhere, and something happens. Maybe you see a child being assaulted, or an old person being bullied, or it's road rage, or ATM machine, whatever. I don't care how it happens. You are now facing a person who's grabbing your throat or whatever, and you go, and not only does the high block not work, boom, that guy pounds you a couple, 3-4 times, or headbutts you, or gouges your eye, or takes your head and bashes on the ground a couple of times and goes, oh, what the fuck was that? So, and you go, oh my God, it didn't work. I've never done that in a dojo before, So from a conceptual point of view, this is the way it works. And I'm going to take one example, okay? One example. and I'm going to use the one example, and I'm going to, because of our time frames today, or I'll talk all day long, and I'm going to hope that the listener will be able to form a deduction or an opinion based upon the abstract and then apply it to everything else, okay? Because what I'm saying to you is if it has to do with, punching and kicking, think about it for a minute. Let's say you approach me anywhere, street, car, work, and you challenge, I challenge you to a fight right now. I'm going to hit you. You can respond like that, and you're not a tree. You don't have to stay there. You can run away. You're not a coward. Why would you want to stay and fight? Just get out of there. Go as fast as you can. Or get in your car, drive away. Hide in a room, lock the door, call the police. There's lots of things you can do. But when someone seizes a hold, sorry. Bang, I get hit from behind. What can I do? Nothing. You've already been, there's nothing you can do. You're probably unconscious already. So you can't do anything. We can only talk about the things you can do something about. You get seized, or you get grabbed, or you get headlocked, or whatever it happens to be. Let's make it really easy. You get, a guy grabs you, okay, and he's got that, he's big, he's strong. You assume that's not the first time he's done something like that. And he's caught you off balance, and you're scared. So the chemistry in your body is at fight or flight stage. You have no idea what's going on, and he's going to fill your face full of knuckles, and you go, oh my God. So right away you go into this automatic, instinctive, you cover up, you grab, you try to pull a person towards you. You got a little, how do you do that? How do you do it? Well, probably because your coach, your teacher, your trainer, your mentor, your sensei, your something, your sifu has said to you, okay, guys, today in class, I'm going to show you what being grabbed by the throat does. Usually if somebody grabs you by the throat, they're either going to try to squeeze your larynx or depress the blood or air, and they're either going to hit you with the other hand or shove you up against a wall. And maybe they draw 5 or 6 different outcomes that are possible from being seized this way. And then with the hand, with the headbutt, with the throw, so on. And then the vocabulary, please excuse my language. We're just doing this because we're doing it. You fucking piece of fuckers, so, I mean, I don't see that in the dojo, I don't see the guys using this facial and verbal and violent behavioral mentality. And I don't see that, by the way. Not in a lot of schools, I don't see it. So let's say this coach is smart enough or experienced enough to share that with the learner. So you learn about seizing. You understand why it's dangerous, why it's strong, why it's powerful, what can happen to you in all different types of scenarios from being seized, and all the different peripheral things that can happen, and how much time you might have to respond before you fall unconscious, or it becomes so excruciating you can't do anything, or you get hit and process. So all of this is all explored, is all explained, and then you get a second person, and then you start to rehearse this in a little drill form. And it's done very, very cautiously, and nobody's getting hurt. And the reason for that is the same reason why, say, a parent might teach their little children how to ride a bicycle for the first time. Because they love the children. They don't want the child to get hurt. Because if the child gets hurt on the bicycle, they may want to go back on the bicycle again. They may not trust the parent anymore. You know what I mean? So there's duty of care and attention. An instructor owes that responsibility to the learner to be careful the way they impart the information. So, and we call that the passive resistance module. So in passive resistance, I gently put the hand there, and they practice maybe spit in the face, little flick into the cojones, slapping the ears, or poking the eye, and anything to run away. All roads lead to run away, or pick up a baseball bat, whatever you're going to do, okay? And that becomes a little miniature drill on that one little technique. And now 5 minutes later, 5 hours later, 5 days later, 5 months later, I don't know. I cannot tell you how long it's going to take you or her or him or the super athlete or the blind guy. How long will it take that person to feel comfortable and familiar with the settings, the violence, before they're able to move up to the next level of beginning to add aggressive resistance to that exercise? And then trading partners, like doing a kind of a carousel or a line drill. Today I practice with the girl. She's 50 kilograms. 5 minutes later, I'm working with the next guy, who's an African American 100 kilogram guy. Now I'm working with the Greek guy, a multicultural. I'm working with the Greek guy as a bodybuilder. He's 95 kilograms. 6% body fat, and he's a fighter, an athlete. Now I'm working with the airline pilot. Now I'm working with a nurse. Now I'm working with a blind guy. I work with everybody. And then we gradually to exponentially invest more and more and more aggressive resistance. But I don't add the aggressive resistance to a learner who hasn't yet experienced level 1, you see? Because it's like putting a guy on a bicycle and throwing him down the hill. And when he's 3 years old, they're going to fall off. They're going to hurt themselves, and they're going to be scared, and they're not going to come back to that lesson again. And so rather than me helping the learner become empowered, I scare them away, or I intimidate them, or I bully them, or my method, one style fits all mentality, loses them, you see? And I don't encourage that person to embrace the fighting arts. I scare them away. And so this is a process. And I cannot say to you, Joe, Bob, Antonio, how long it's going to take you to get this. But I can guarantee you that the more you embrace aggressive resistance scenario-based practices of that one technique, you will gradually to exponentially become better and better at it, until such time as a fucking guy grabs you and they're just going, and you got the template. And not only do you have that template, you've also then found out that against this type of person, that doesn't work. And if I went like this, and this, and it didn't work, I have a backup plan to do this, and this, or that, or whatever. And maybe he's so big and he's so strong, or she's so big and she's so strong, that the normal stuff doesn't work. And I've got to employ something separate. Maybe I got to spit into their face, or maybe I got to take maybe I got to take out the ball pen out of my thing and fucking jam it in their eye, or I don't know. I'm not going to die today. I don't want to get hurt, and I didn't ask for this. So I'm going to do everything and anything I can to escape from that act of physical violence, so that my life can continue on safely. And I don't care about the safety of this person, because that responsibility ended when they attacked me, you see? So my point is simply this. I go back to the pedagogical point again. The guy says, how does this work? It works like this. And now I said just one choke, right? I just said one choke, right? Okay. How about now 2 hands? How about from the front, from the back? How about from the side? How about a rear-naked choke? How about a guillotine choke? How about a full Nelson, a half Nelson, a father Nelson? How do I get all of these acts of physical violence? Well, you just got the joke now, right? How do I get all of them? Because someone before me quantified what types of acts of violence are there. Well, think about it for a minute. I mean, if it's not percussive impact, which needs distance to travel, and there's way back here, this is what we call projectile distance. I'm throwing a spear, I'm shooting a bullet, I'm throwing a rock, I'm shooting a bow, and that's called projectile distance. And if you're within projectile distance, you can run away. Then there's kicking distance, and then there's punching distance, and then there's clinch distance or grappling distances. So this is called Mai. It is the combative engagement space in between each of these possibilities occurring, you see. And so each of those spaces are study scenarios that have to be practiced, you see. And all of those, the types of acts of violence that can be perpetuated at those distances all have to be embraced, all have to be practiced. They all have to be, and by the way, this is a matter of interest. Let's pretend, okay, now I know how to do that. Yeah, okay, now I'm 27 years old. I'm a flight attendant for Iberia, and I'm really fit, and I like going out on the weekends and having fun, and I'm a nice guy. I'm not a bad person, and so and then I'm very strong because I go to the gym 3 times a week, and right now at this moment in my life, I can do that no problem against anybody. Okay. But how about now? How about in 10 years? Or how about when you get married, settle down, have a family, you can't go to the gym anymore? Or how about now when you're 57? Or 67, or 77, or how about the kid who's 13? You see what I mean? So that when I say to those people who I have the privilege of sharing information with, when I say something like, not everybody can do the same thing the same way to achieve the same outcome, I'm not kidding. And I can also say that even you, who might have mastered it now, might not be able to do the same thing 20 years from now, the same way. And so all of these, this is what I mean about being fluid. That's a quote up there as well. But the strangle never changes, and it might be in the half a dozen. It might be like, as I say, on the floor. The guy might be on top of you strangling. He might have you up against the wall. It might be a big guy. Could be a little person. Could be domestic violence. Could be your wife. Things have happened, right? So the point I'm trying to make is the process of making the 2-person scenario-driven drill, and the passive resistance, gradual to exponential investment of aggressive resistance, to the point where it doesn't matter how hard you're going, because it can all be negotiated with timeless application practices that have been passed down for hundreds of years. Now, you might encounter an instructor who's an innovator. And that innovator might have discovered or developed a better way of accomplishing the same thing. They might say, for example, one of my jiu-jitsu instructors was Professor Wally J. Professor Wally J came up with an idea about using Kano's old large circles to displace balance, and he make them into smaller circles by using your hip for balance displacement. It was still balance displacement, leading control, and sphericity, what we call leading control, but it was just tighter circles, which meant it was a microcosm to the movement before you had the macrocosm, and I thought that was wonderful. But that's an innovation. The result is still to throw the guy, still to land him on it, and still to run away. So these type of things is what I mean about fluid. There's always going to be someone who creates a succinct way of accomplishing the same goal. And Arthur Schopenhauer was the guy who said, for everybody who does that, you're going to meet people who will ridicule you or oppose you or say that they knew it before you, And that, Machiavelli was the same way. End justifies the means. And if you create a way of doing something that's, it makes more sense than the other way, right away you're going to have enemies from the guys who do it the old way, And I've experienced them all. I mean, every one of them. At one time, I was being attacked by so many different people, politically, Oh, he doesn't know what he's doing. He made it up. Guys, that's not karate. And the funny part about it is now, all these years later, those old guys who attacked me and criticized me so much, they are now being congratulated for teaching what they criticized me for creating 35 years ago. It's funny. Anyway, so just to respond to the last part about unscripted and random acts of violence. So what's the mechanism? So let's say you've learned all the joint manipulations, limb entanglement, blood and air deprivation. You learned all of this stuff. You learned how to deal with checking, blocking, trapping, the timing. You've done it with everybody. How then do you get it all to work together? From the distance, from the clinch, from the punch, from the grappling. How about if you fall on the ground? How do you get it all working? Okay, like this. So first of all, my background is not in BJJ. My background is in catch wrestling. I was a Greco-Roman high school wrestler in high school, but then I went on to become a catch wrestler. I trained in Japan with UWF. You probably don't know them. We became known as the Pride Fighters. Pride. Okay, so that was Takada Nobuhiko. He was my coach, and Sayama Satoru was another guy. You can do the history. We were known as the United Wrestlers Federation International. Then we became known as the Grapplers. Then we became known as the Shoot Fighters. Then we became known as Pride. Okay, that was my background. So I know about all that type of stuff long before the UFC was ever invented. By the way, guys like Baz Rutten, and we were Dan. We brought those guys to Japan to fight us first time. They came to Japan first before the UFC, before 1993, and the UFC happened. Ask me another time. We'll tell you all about this. So here's the point. If I say to a BJJ guy or an MMA guy, I say, okay, guys, look, class is an hour. We're going to do some. We're going to warm up a little bit. We're going to do some main training. Focus pit bags. Then you got at the end. We're going to do some stretching, cool down. So you only have 25 minutes to roll. So we're going to do some roll. 25 minutes. Cool. So 25 minutes. They get 25 minutes. And there's say 20 people in class. They all partner off. Everybody gets a partner. You don't care who you go with. It's anybody. There's no belts, say BJ. Well, blue belts can all go together. The white belts go together. But after a while, it doesn't matter. Everybody just goes with everybody. And you get on the ground and you start rolling. And the job is to tap or submit the person. So yeah, I'm here. Come on. I don't wait until my arm is broken. Go, oh, that's a really good technique. I tap. Tap. So when you tap, you don't stop. You tap and you just keep going. And you keep going and go, fight, yeah, mate, change partner. And you bounce and you go over and you start with them. And the next guy. So for 25 minutes, you might roll with, I don't know, if you're doing 3-4 minute rounds, maybe you roll with 5 guys or 6 guys or something. You do that every night, every day of the week. That's right. If you were an MMA fighter, this is the same thing. Go to the gym, okay? You don't go into the cage and beat the living shit out of each other. You're just training. You're practicing. So, you might do 5 sparring partners tonight, then you're going to hit the bag, you're going to do this, you might do a little bit of rolling. Or if you're a judoka, this is the same way, you warm up, you break falls, and you do the randori. Kendo's the same, boxing the same. All of these functional fighting traditions follow the same process, you know what I mean? So, how does it work in karate? Well, it works in karate the same way. All of the percussive impact works the same way. Do you remember the movie Enter the Dragon with Bruce Lee?
Mm. Yes.
Did you see it 500 times?
Classic.
So you remember in the opening fight scene, he's got his little black outfit on, he's got his gloves, Remember, this is 1972, 73. Okay, this is 1972. So he's got that whole MMA thing going on, and he's the guy in the film who's going to fight with in the opening scene. His name is Sammo Hung. He's a very young Sammo Hung, long hair, a little bit chubby, right? Anyway. You notice how they start the fight? They start the fight like this. They crossed hands, right? They crossed hands. So back in the day, in China, in the village square, or you wanted to challenge somebody. That's how, and it wasn't weapons. It was empty hand. That's how they cross hands. So in Okinawa, here in Okinawa, back in the day, we had a term we call kakie demashi. Kakie, that's this hooking hand, and damashi is tamashi, means spirit, the spirit of crossing hands. And one of the traditions we used to practice is something called tegumi. Now, tegumi is kumite backwards. You see, kumite is the modern version of old school tegumi, but tegumi back in the day was mostly about clinching. You see, now it's evolved into like Okinawan sumo. And it doesn't look anything, it's like it's early. But when 2 guys wanted to test each other's skills, they went up the back. Let's go at the back. Let's go at the back of the old castle and cross hands. And that's how, and that's where because you see, you're not at kicking distance. You're up close. And so in the Bruce Lee part, he's cross hands, and then he comes over the top and he checks the hand and he back fists his face, you see right away. And that's Bob. That's Bob Wall, by the way. Bob. I was at Bob's 80th birthday party last year, by the way. Anyway, you know, and then if it wasn't that, then it was clinched. It wasn't clinched if you fell to the ground. So this mechanism, we call it Ri-ai Tegumi. Ri-ai. Ri. So I is like the eye of Aikido. I means harmonious. Di means the principles, and then Tegumi means crossing hands. So I guess the translation would be using the principles of crossing hands in a harmonious way. And basically, all it really means is it's an engagement. It's a highly, and here's the term, catalytic mechanism. Catalytic is a term we use in English that means how one force and another force can create something greater than the sum total of its individual parts. And so this catalytic-like practice means you start together like this, and it might just be shoving hands back and forth, or it might be grabbing right away. And whatever it is, because you've already reenacted it hundreds, if not thousands of times in the past, I already know what to do if I get bear hugged or I get choked, or if I'm getting choked and I try to escape from doing this and he does something else. I've experienced that in the past. So even though it might be unscripted now or random, it's happened to me before in this situation. So somebody says, what happens if it happens, you know, all the naysayers, you know, what happens if something happened that didn't happen before? Well, you're either going to be the recipient of that percussive impact and you get hurt. You hope you're not. Or you're going to be smart enough to be able to realize, oh my God, I'm at this close, I'm not doing that, that's dangerous, and I got to do something ahead of time. So I become proactive rather than defensive. You see what I mean? And so, this is a defense. Well, yes, a defensive art can also be used in a proactive way. And that's what we call, you know, Gono-sen, Sen-no-sen, and Sen. And these are the abilities. And so in that discussion, I end it like this. So the two-person drill, and this is mostly for the disbelievers, okay? So the two-person drill, and do you understand when I say the choke? I can replace it now with a guillotine or a bear hug, or I shove that garment over my head and I'm punching, you know, or I'm tackled from behind, or I'm throwing mount, guard, north, south. It doesn't side mount. Doesn't matter. Every one of these acts of violence can be quantified. And because they can be quantified, they can be studied. And because they can be studied, then the mechanism that can be used against them to negotiate them can also be the same way. And then the process of trial and error, aggressive resistance, until such time as you can become functional. And once you become functional, then that can be made into a solo. You separate the attacker from the defender, and you can take that and make it, you can ritualize it into a little template, you see? And then once the template is locked in place, I can bring other templates together into some type of interesting geometry, and I can create something greater than the sum total of its individual parts. And that is what we call kata, or kunsei, or kyun, or chuan, or taolu, or a template. And that's the part about kata. And that's the beauty about what science and art fuse together to create a transformative mechanism that changes your life. And this is it. And so when I say condition the body, cultivate the mind, nurture the spirit, it's based upon functional two-person drills. That is the fighting art. I'm finished.
We have many questions. Like, I think we have to be in another interview soon and to answer. Many of the questions here, they are already answered, right, Edgar? Everything, like,
Yeah.
many of the questions that we have ready for today, they were answered through this talk. And I think I think we can do like 20 more interviews with different subjects. We learn a lot of things. And Edgar, you want to add maybe a last question before?
No, for me, it's good. And now we have the
That's
power.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Good luck with the translation. Yeah. Hey, and by the way, did you want, because I have many students in Spain, and in Madrid and Barcelona and Gran Canaria and Las Pontes del Pedro and down south, So, if you like, I can send you my my Cibucho, my representative there, David Fernandez Para. And so, if you want, you could, if you say, "Oh, what did he mean when he said this? How do you say that in Spanish or something?" He can, he will be happy to help you with that type of stuff, And just if you want, I can connect the two of you together.
Yes.
And also, yeah, like I said, I don't have the, oh, wait, maybe I do, just a minute. I have so many things on my desk. My desk looks like, no, just a minute. Oh, no, maybe it's right here. So I was doing this project here in Okinawa for, sorry, it's not that one. You can just edit this out later. Oh, look, he's incompetent fool. Usually only my what
Greasy. Yeah.
Close. Yeah.
what was that? Working yes? No. Okay. This is Miyagi Chojin's handwritten 1934 document. They call Karate Do Gaisetsu. The explanation he wrote. This is his own handwriting. This is and another one of his documents here. Oh, sorry. But that's not what I wanted to show you. But I just while I'm looking for what I wanted to show you, I got look. I was looking for that. Oh, look at that. Okay, that's not what I was looking for, by the way. But that's quite interesting. I just came across this. Here's another project I'm working on right now. This is just a minute. The fan's blowing everything away. This is a previously undiscovered and unpublished 1932 book, unpublished by Kyan Chotoku. That I'm just doing the translation of right now. It's gonna be a great project. But no, here. Okay, here's what I want to show you. In this document here. Yeah, this is it. Hang on, I just got to turn the fan off there. All the papers are blowing over here. So.
Oh, yeah.
My name is Antonio Espinosa. I'm currently the president of the World Karate Federation. The World Karate Federation is an international governing body, blah, 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 blah. Patrick McCarthy's research, translations, and books have helped fill a very neglected educational gap separating the competitive aspect from the art from its scholarly, anthropological, and pedagogical component within the traditional karate community. His unique contributions and qualifications have made him one of the leading authorities of traditional karate in the West. Without a doubt, traditional karate community would benefit greatly by having this authority, authority of this standing. Please feel free to contact me, blah, 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 blah. So if you want, I send you a copy of this, okay? So you can use it with the...
Perfect.
And I got another one from the Tokyo Karate Olympic Committee and the Canadian Black Belt Hall of Fame, and then see, I had to get all these documents that my teacher and I, with my credentials, all that stuff, and you cannot read that, but stuff like that, and I needed all these documents because you meet people, they don't know who you are, you can't always believe everything people say, right? So I had to have some credentials, something to prove who I was and stuff like that. So they were all very defensive, and then I went down there and showed them a list, and I went, okay, please come in. So yeah, anyway, that's God. There's never a dull moment anyway. That's what we're currently doing right now. And so, if you need more questions or answers, I'm happy to.
No, we can set a lot of more interviews with different
Yeah.
subjects. Like I think the people are gonna love and in different topics, and especially historic, because I think people need to learn and study more about the origins of everything. Uh, I especially when I used to teach, I'm not teaching too much anymore. Uh, Aikido, Aikijutsu, that's what I usually more focus on. I love to go to that tradition and the people learn the root of everything, like where they come from, what we do it like this, the historic way of everything. I think that's super important for us as a martial artist. I think it's very important. And I want to thank Edgar for setting this out. Thank you so much, Edgar, my little brother from Spain. And thank you so much, Sensei, to accept this, um, honor us with this amazing knowledge. And you are very kind. I hope we can do it soon.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I'm here in Okinawa now. I'm here forever, so I'm not going anywhere. And it's COVID. It's still pandemic, so
Mm.
there's nothing else happening. We cannot travel anywhere yet, so we have to continue doing it. But let me ask you a question. So, Edgar, what's your background? You're a karate student?
I started with the Shito-ryu, I practiced Matsubayashi Ryu, I practiced the Wechi Ryu, but the styles for me isn't important. For me, is the principles, no, the sense of the karate, and that's the most important.
Which Shito Ryu were you with? Were you with Ishimi's group there in Madrid?
Well, Ishimi is Ishimi is in Madrid.
He's everywhere, right? You can't get away from him.
Yeah, my teacher learned to Ishimi, but well, my own style is a little bit different. No, I'm not focusing in the competition or in the beautiful forms. I like the practice.
Yeah, when I was the second time I came to Madrid, and then Antonio Torres hosted me at the thing. That night, that evening, on my first night there, Ishimi came to me, and oh yeah, wow, fantastic stuff. Can I take you to dinner? And so he took me to dinner, and we talked about that. And then he came. You saw him. He was there the next day, and then I said, okay, so then maybe. How many people? There were 175 black belts or something. There were so many people in the room. I said it's almost impossible to teach. I felt like Michael Jackson teaching singing at a concert or something because I had the headphones on up and there was so many people. And I said it's better to have a smaller group of people and focus on function. So, okay. So, and what's your background? You also, I noticed you've got the samoe on. That's the Japanese style samoe. I like that.
Yeah, because I'm a Buddhist and soon I'm gonna be ordained. COVID delayed everything. COVID now is a situation. Oh, and when everything's set up here, I will be. I cannot go to Japan right now. Maybe I will do it in Los Angeles, the Sensuji Temple. But everything is on hold right now. And also, I used to teach for many years Aikido, um, Aikido-jutsu. So,
What kind of Aikido?
huh?
What kind of Aikido?
Well, I start with Aikitai, which is I'm from Cuba, so in Cuba was mandatory doing Aikitai. You cannot do anything else. It was prohibited by the government. You know how it is.
Very
Uh,
well.
and but I have the chance to meet people that were visiting Cuba, and I have the chance to learn from Yoshinkan School Iwama.
My wife is Yoshinkan.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I love Yoshinkan. I love
Yes,
Yoshinkan.
Yeah, and she used to practice at the police Tokyo dojo, with Shiora Gozo sensei,
Chioda
It's funny, but I know Iwama. I know I met him in Saito here in Tokyo, many years ago. We used to go to the same art dealer together, but I did a big lecture in Fidenza, in Italy. Fidenza got the biggest Buddhist monastery in Europe, and they invited me to give a lecture, a Zen lecture there, 2 years ago. I was there 2 years ago. And if you want some pictures or something for the interview, I'll send them to you.
Please.
And it was a lot of fun. And the guy said, I thought I was just going to go to say hello to people, because my Italian representative said, because we were going to go up near Slovenia, to teach, and we were coming up from the Adriatic coast, driving up, and he said, "Oh, we're going to go to Fidenza, we're going to go to Parma, the Buddhist temple we're going to drop into, see the Buddhist temple." Yeah, okay, yeah, good. Anyway, we get there, and there's like 50 Buddhist monks in training, sitting there in Seiza waiting for me to enter the room, and I went, okay, what am I doing? You're here to lecture. And I went, okay. So no warning at all, and it was one of the greatest. I had the greatest times, And of course, at the end, you always say, "Thanks for nothing," and I was like, what a laugh. We had a great story, and I remember I was, oh my God, what am I going to do? And so the first thing came to my mind was, I'm going to tell them the story about Chiba Shusaku. That's what we start out the lecture with the story of the last swordsman, Chiba Shusaku, the last samurai. And I thought, they never heard the story before. And I went, oh my God, but the Roshi was laughing at me, going, oh yeah, okay. I'm going in the back. I'm going to have a small drink of wine. I give you 45 minutes. I come back later. He didn't come back for 3 hours. It was like, and we had the best time of our life. And I thought, that's the great thing about, especially about Buddhism, But here, just the other day, we were over to Hakka. Hakka is like a cemetery, and there was I gave it away. So we found this old, because of the Kyan Chotoku book that I'm researching right now. I had a very old piece of calligraphy. I can read and write Japanese, but I couldn't read this. I asked my wife, she can't read it. I asked my friend, who's a Shodo teacher, he cannot read it either. I went to Hokama Tetsuhiro, he's a master calligrapher. He could read only little bit of it. So we had to send it out, and it came back. And it was a piece of calligraphy written 140 years ago by a very famous Okinawan Zen master. And it's a quote from Dogen, from the 13th century. It's a quote by Dogen. And all the Zen quotes are basically the same. Like, let go of your ego, and then you're going to enjoy your life, everything, right? And so it was like that, and oh my God. So I'm going to include this Buddhist quote in this book that we're doing, because it was Kyan Chotoku's father who worked for the Ryukyu king here, and he did this. So anyway, I had a wonderful pleasure when I was in Tokyo. I was training with one of the many, we didn't talk about him today, but one of my Koburo teachers was Inoue Moto Katsu, Ryukyu Koburo Kobujitsu Hozo Shinkokai, and his father was a famous general, and his grandfather was the Minister of Foreign Affairs at the Meiji period here in Japan. His name was Inoue Kaoru. And so very wealthy families they came from. But this is off from the interview, right? So, and he had an opportunity to train with many people. So anyway, so when Yuriko and I got married, we had a kind of a special gathering party up in Tokyo, and one of the guests came to was, of course, Inoue Motokatsu, right? But two special guests came. Was the daughter of Fujita Seiko. Fujita Seiko was a ninja. He was the last ninja, and his daughter came, and then there was another person. I said, "Who's that?" He goes, "Oh, that's Kishimaru." And I went, "You mean Ueshiba Morihei's son?" I go, "Yep, that's who he is." So I have nice photographs of him and I together, and of course Iwama Saito was there, and I remember some American girl. I never met her before, but she was always like this, no. And every time I got close to Saito, she goes, "Stay back." Anyway, later I found out she was a high-ranking American Aikido stylist. But I never had a chance to practice Aikikai, but when I was a kid learning Kung Fu in Toronto, you guys know the book called Angry White Pajamas?
No.
Oh.
No.
It's a book. It's in the Aikido world. It's a very popular book. Stanley Piranha from Aikido Journal wrote a lot about this book back in the 80s. It's called Angry White Pajamas, and it's a book about this foreigner living in Japan and training at the Yoshinkan. And his name was Robert Mustard. And so I went to meet Robert Mustard, and I met him at the Budo University in Japan back in the late 80s, and they were, and now I'd like to introduce Sensei McCarthy to Sensei Robert Mustard. And everybody was expecting everybody to went, Robert, yeah, un abrazo, mi amigo. And they were, oh my God, how do you know each other? I said, so what you don't know about the Aikido master was when he was a kid, he used to practice Kung Fu. And what you don't know about me, when I was a kid, I practiced Kung Fu, and we practiced Kung Fu together when we were kids. And they said, we had no idea that Robert, and now Robert's living back in British Columbia, Vancouver, Canada. So he's back there now, and he's, Hachida 8th Dan, not Joe Tambu is another one, from Yoshinkan. There's not many big guys still left. Jacques Payet, of course, is another one in France and so on like that. But it's a dynamic tradition, which unfortunately is not as popular today with this whole MMA BJJ thing as it once was back in the day. So, well, I'm very happy that you guys invited me onto the program. I just, I hope I didn't talk too much for you. You can cut it down as little as you like. It's okay by me.
We are very happy as well. I think this is going to be people are going to love this interview, and hopefully we're going to do a few more eventually. We have a lot of ideas and questions. I think we need to clarify for many people around the world. Like, they just want to learn, and I want to thank you again, and thanks Edgar, my friend, my brother, for everything, and to all my friends. I hope you enjoyed this interview, and don't forget to subscribe, give us a good like, so this channel could be, a little bit more known around the world. And I see you in the next one. Blessings to you all. Gasho.